If you're an entrepreneur and you struggle with imposter syndrome, then this podcast is for you. So about a year ago, I had a new client reach out to me and he asked if I had experience working with entrepreneurs that struggle with imposter syndrome. And I said, sure, that's the thing that I do most. So he reached out to me, we had a consultation. And after we started talking, he told me that whenever he has something big that's coming up, he tends to play small. He feels as though he's not worthy of these things. And what's interesting about this was that this guy was very talented. He was featured in a lot of magazines, and if I were to name a few of them, like the New York Times, you would know them. But what was interesting was that when it came to something big, like a real big opportunity, and he was on the cusp of becoming great, becoming known, he would shrink. He would, in his words, F it up. And what was funny about this, or rather what was interesting about this, was that this guy was pretty talented. And to tell you how talented he was, he asked me a question because he wanted to know if I was the right fit for him. So he asked me, he said, hey, I know we're talking. I know you're, an expert at what you do, but I had a question. And I was like, sure, what is it? And he goes and he says, have you ever worked with someone who made over $10 million? And honestly, at the time, no. I've worked with a couple of people that made, multiple six figures or even made millions, right? So 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, right? I've had those clients, but I never had someone make over $10 million. And it was interesting. And I bring that up because I wanted to break a myth that you have when it comes to imposter syndrome. Right now, you have this belief that imposter syndrome only affects people who are, let's say, not successful, not rich, right? Not talented. But imposter syndrome can happen to anyone. And I'm talking about it in some of these points to help you to overcome your imposter syndrome. Because once you have this understanding of what it is, you then know how to defeat it. And what imposter syndrome is this feeling that you don't belong. It's this feeling that where you've gotten in life has been all a facade. It's all been luck. It's all been by happen chance. But that's not the case. Where you are in life is where you are because of the work that you put in. Now, also, here's another thing. A lot of people sometimes feel that they're not worthy of the things that they receive, right? Not worthy of the recognition, the awards, so on and so forth. In other words, they just don't feel like they're good enough. This is something that keeps a lot of people from trying new things. It keeps them suffocated in their comfort zone. And what I want you guys to be able to do is to break free from this comfort zone so that not only you can have the rewards and the accomplishments that you're looking for, but there's a good chance you have someone that you're dying to serve. There's a group of people, there's a population that would benefit from your services or your products. And I need you to be able to reach them. So that's the whole purpose of this podcast. So before we get into point number one, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, because by hitting the subscribe button, you join a community of people, a community of entrepreneurs and professionals that are working to become some of the greatest, most well-known people in this world. And that all starts by mastering the mental health piece, mastering the mindset. And that's what all my podcasts are about. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Let's get into point number one. So one of the best ways to help you to overcome your imposter syndrome is to actually separate from it. And the way we do that is by giving it an identity. So when we give our mind this feeling, this pattern of thinking, an identity, it helps preserve the number one asset we have. And that asset is our self-concept. Self-concept is the way that you view yourself. When you look at yourself in the mirror, metaphorically or even literally, there's something that you see. And for some people, they look in the mirror and they don't see what they want to see. They don't see anything that's pleasant, anything that's confident, or anything that's pleasurable. And as a result, they avoid looking in that mirror. They avoid doing tasks that will reflect who they are. So what that may mean is taking on big tasks, challenges, whatever the case may be, even leadership roles, right? Trying to do new things that will show your skill set. Because at the end of the day, two things are going to happen. Either you're going to succeed or you're going to fail. And if you're stepping up to the plate to something that you feel as not in your wheelhouse, right? Something that you feel is not something that you feel that you're going to struggle with, if I should say that, there's a good chance you're not going to step up to the plate. And what that's going to do is just feed into the imposter syndrome because you're not taking action. So how do you overcome it? You give it an identity. And what I have my clients do in my sessions is I have them give this identity a name. Now, here's the thing. When you give this identity a name, it shouldn't have a negative name to it. It shouldn't have a negative concept to it, right? So like Debbie Downer or Timid Tim or, anything like that. Your name should have just a very objective name. And also this name shouldn't be anything that is connected to you. So it shouldn't be your middle name or your nickname or anything like that. Because again, what we want to do is we want to create a clear boundary between what you say about yourself and then what your mind says about you. Because the thing that happens a lot is that when people have these unhelpful thoughts or negative thoughts, they tend to hear it from their own voice. They tend to hear it from their perspective. And it makes it very hard for them to believe that this is not them that's speaking. So to add a little spice into this technique, I also want you to give this person, right, this identity that you created, I also want you to give it a voice that is very different from your own. So this could be a new accent. So it can be a northern accent, southern accent, sound like someone from California, sound like someone from the Caribbean, right? Whatever the case it may be. It can even be like an old person or a young person or a baby. I want you to hear this voice, this new person, this thing called imposter syndrome. I need you to also imagine hearing these thoughts in a different voice. Because when you hear this thought that you're not good enough, in let's say a very old man's voice that's from the north or from the south, it helps you to not believe everything that it's saying. And if you really want to take it further, this is a technique that I sometimes give. You can even hear these thoughts in the voice of, let's say, a cartoon character, like it could be like Daffy Duck or Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse or anything like that, just to add a little bit of lightness to it, to help you to be able to laugh at these thoughts when you have them. When you do this, it allows you to have the thought, right? But it allows you not to believe that thought when it comes up. Because one thing that I practice with my clients is acceptance. Acceptance is not about trying to make thoughts go away or try to only have positive thoughts. Acceptance is all about embracing whatever shows up. And sometimes when you try new things, guess what happens? Some negative thoughts come up, some harsh judgment starts to come up. And when that happens, I don't want you to get into this tussle with it. I want you to be able to allow it to be there, but not be so bought into everything that this mind of yours is saying. So if your name is, let's say, Anthony, and you want to give your mind the name Ted, hey, let's do it, right? Let's ask ourselves, man, what is Ted going to say today? Or you can even ask yourself, man, Ted got some really good jokes today. He's really, ratcheting things up, if you will, today. Like you can take that approach. And also, I'll even give you this one because you made it this far through the podcast. There's another technique you can do with this, and it's simply by thanking your mind. So when you go through the mall and you're walking through the aisles, right, you typically have these people in the middle at these little kiosks that are trying to sell you things, right? So it could be like chains like I have, or it can be bracelets, it could be colognes, things like that. And when they ask you, you typically say what? No, thank you. And you keep going. But what's happening right now is when that person in the kiosk is saying, hey, do you want to buy a chain? Like you're stopping and you're getting into this argument with them. Like, why are you asking me this? Why are you here? Can't you go away? But they have every right to be there. And what the person in the kiosk represents is that they represent your mind. They represent this person that you've created, this identity that you've created. Because here's the thing, guys. Trying to make this, so the mind and all the negative stuff go away, is going to be a battle that you'll be fighting for the rest of your life. So what I'm asking you to do is to not fight that battle and find something else that's more helpful to you. And what that is telling the mind, thank you. And when you do that, it's more so the standpoint of, thanks for your advice, but I'm going to keep going. And that's the same thing you do when you're in the mall or when someone offers you something. You say, thanks, but I'm okay. And that's what you're going to do the next time your mind gives you some, let's say, unhelpful advice, and you don't want to believe it. You just tell it, thanks, and that's okay. And you keep going towards your goals. And this is the first way that's going to help you to overcome your imposter syndrome. Step number 2, and before I actually give it, I want to give you guys a story about how this connects to step number 2. So about a month ago, I went to Tennessee for a family reunion. And in Tennessee, they have a very famous set of mountains called the Smoky Mountains. And the Smoky Mountains, they have a lot of different things you can do, from a lot of rides, restaurants, hiking trails, a lot of great stuff. But one thing that I did was absolutely crazy, and to this day, I don't know why I did it, but I went ziplining. So ziplining is a very fun activity. It's a very scary activity as well, but it's a fun activity that you do where you basically zip line from mountain to mountain using this little harness, and this harness is connected to this little string, and you're probably thousands of feet in the sky. And you're probably going about, I want to say maybe 40, 50, or maybe 60 miles an hour as you're going down this little itty bitty rope all the way to this other side of the mountain. So when we got to the reservation, we got into these ATVs and we started going up this mountain. And when I tell you it took us a long time to get up this mountain, it took us a long time to get up this mountain. So we're driving, I'm getting anxious, I'm getting nervous. And when we parked, the ladies simply pointed up and said, hey, that's where we're going. So I'm like, yo, we're not there yet. And they're like, no. So we had to get out of the ATVs, go up the bridge. And when we finally got to the top, I looked over the edge, and guys, I tell you no lie, we were thousands of feet in the sky. And I started to feel very anxious. I started to ask myself, why did I do this? Why did I spend my money to be scared, to be anxious, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. But here I am, right, on this top of this mountain, connected to this rope, and this instructor is basically telling me everything I need to know to keep me alive. So when I'm up there, I'm doing every technique I can to try to make my anxiety go away. And then it hit me. It hit me that no technique was going to get rid of this anxiety. The only way I can get rid of this anxiety was if I went back down the mountain. And that's not what I wanted to do, because I wanted to zip line. I wanted to challenge myself. So what I had to do was I had to change my goal from how do I get rid of this anxiety to let me focus on the instructor actually giving me life-saving advice. When I did that, I started to focus on more helpful actions at that time, because at the time, what I was doing before was just doing all these techniques, trying to vanquish this anxiety like it's just some beast, if you will. But that's a fight that, man, I got to be honest, you're not going to win. And up until this point, that's the fight that you've been fighting. And I got to admit, you're probably very tired of fighting that fight. You're probably getting very exhausted and worn out. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now. They're fighting these negative thoughts. They're fighting this imposter syndrome with a weapon, with a strategy, honestly, that is not going to work. And it just leaves you more and more exhausted. So this is what happened when I was on the zip line. So when I got on the zip line, anxious as I was, I just said, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to commit. And I went very slowly and very afraid, but I made it to the end. And there were 6 zip lines, and I just did one, right? So I got ready and did the second, did the third, did the fourth. And when I came to the 5th one and I completed it, right, something interesting happened, actually. I noticed that I was still feeling anxious. And it's like, wait, I've did 5 zip lines, right? And I'm about to do the last one. I'm about to do the 6th and last one. But yeah, I'm still anxious. I would have thought, man, I would have felt more confident by this time. But that's not how confidence works. What happened was that my anxiety stayed at a level 10. But when I started, my ability to deal with that anxiety was at a level 1. And when I got to the 6th and final zip line, my ability to handle that anxiety went from a level 1 to a level 10. And I promise you guys, if I were to keep going on those zip lines, or the next time I go on a zip line, my ability to deal with that anxiety will then be at 11. So what I'm trying to say is that the anxiety, the negative thoughts, the imposter syndrome, hey, that may not go away, but your ability to deal with it, that will increase. It's literally like when you go to the gym. Have you ever noticed the weights don't go down in weight, right? Like, they still weigh the same, but what changes is the strength that you have. So that 45-pound plate that you picked up on the first day, yeah, it was heavy. Trust me, I know. But on the 6th month, 7th month, that weight got a little bit lighter to you. Even though it didn't change in its weight, what changed was your ability to deal with that weight. And that's what we're going to do with your imposter syndrome. And this leads me to step number 2 of how to overcome your imposter syndrome. And it's simply to stop fighting it. Stop fighting the negative thoughts that you have. I would actually love for you to spend more time focused on the actions that you should be taking so that you can be successful. Because when I was ziplining, they made it very clear, if you do not follow these steps, you will get stuck in the middle of the zip line. And here's the thing, guys, I didn't even mention this. When we were ziplining, guess what? It started raining. So it was like every worst thing that you could think of was happening at that moment, right? I was anxious, I was high up in the sky, and it's raining. Guys, man, that was a bad combination. But here I am. I'm alive, and I'm here to tell you that story. And I'm able to tell you that story without getting stuck on the zip line, because I focused on the goal. I didn't focus on trying to get rid of the anxiety. I focused on what it is that I needed to do to be successful. And that's what I need you to do. I need you to stop and ask yourself, what do I need to do in order to be successful with this thing that I'm trying, this thing that I'm trying to accomplish? The anxiety, hey, it's there. Cool, right? We've acknowledged it. It's there. Hey, we can even say hi to it. But next step is for you to focus on what you need to do to be successful. And this is where I tell people, step number 1 in being successful is not believing in yourself. Step number 1 is step number 1. Main point number 3 to help you to overcome your imposter syndrome. And also, I got to say this, guys, thank you for making it this far, man. And if you haven't, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you feel like this podcast has been helpful. So step number 3 to help you overcome your imposter syndrome is to affirm your accomplishments by celebrating them. I want to give you a quote by Thomas Jefferson. He says, "I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more I have of it." And that one, man, I love, because I love the idea of hard work. It's actually one of my values. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't believe. They don't believe that they can create their own luck. They believe that you're born with something or you're given something. Therefore, people that are successful, it's hard for them to believe. And when it's hard for you to have belief that other people who are just like you are now successful, guess what that does? It robs you of any hope. When you're robbed of your hope, guess what you don't do? You don't try. You don't take any actions. And by not taking those actions, guess what you do? You reinforce this imposter syndrome. It's almost like you're feeding a beast, right? You're just pumping it and feeding it, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Sometimes I even tell my clients that, fear, anxiety, it's kind of like that clown on the movie It by Stephen King. And if you watch the new version of it, you see at the end where the clown, so the very scary thing, he started to lose his power the more that the kids who are now adults started to tell them that, hey, we're not afraid of you. Once they started to say that, the clown literally started to shrink in size. But at the beginning, the exact opposite was happening. The more that they feared it, the bigger and the stronger that the clown got. And it's the same thing with your imposter syndrome. Guys, I need you to believe that this thing known as imposter syndrome does not have to stop you. So to a degree, imposter syndrome is something that we all struggle with, believe it or not. That's why I led with the story about the guy who was making a lot of money, who still felt like an imposter, even though he was doing so well. And the reason why is because we're trying new things, right? And also, I'll even say this, we're battling a lot of past evidence that would tell us, hey, you're not who you think you are. And that's why we need to be able to disassociate from the mind, which is why I gave you the first technique, which is giving the mind an identity, right? Giving your imposter syndrome an identity. Now, to go back into this point, what people tend to fail to do is to give themselves credit where credit is due. When it comes to the awards and the accomplishments that you have, trust me when I say people are not giving those things out, right? Like the awards, the accomplishments, the great things that you've been able to do, it comes off the sweat of your back. A lot of times people feel like, but this could have happened to anyone. And that is a surefire way to keep you in that same place of not feeling like you're good enough, not feeling worthy enough. The biggest thing you can do is to celebrate the way that you will celebrate other people when they tell you that they've had some type of success or big win. A lot of times you probably tell them, congrats, that's great. And you may even offer to take them out to dinner or buy them a gift. This is the same thing you should be doing for yourself. And also, don't wait for it to be a big thing in order to celebrate it. Celebrate every step of your journey, because the celebration, what it does is it creates the motivation that you need in order to take that next task that's on your list wholeheartedly. And here's the thing too, guys. I don't want you to think that you need motivation to get started, but being able to celebrate yourself is a great way to create that motivation because you feel that progress has been made. Now, I'll admit, this is something that I struggle with. Right now I'm in the middle of putting together a webinar where I'm going to talk to people about how to build unshakable confidence. And what you can do is you can actually subscribe to my newsletter by clicking the link in the bio to, be on my newsletter so that you can get information about it. But when I'm doing this webinar, there's a part where I have to put all my testimonies, all the case studies. Basically, I have to tell you guys all the things that I've helped other people accomplish by using this framework. And I remember I was going through my case studies and I was looking at some old case studies. So, man, people that I've worked with 2, 3, 4 years ago, looking through the things and everything that they were saying. And I'm sitting there like, hey, did I really help this person to double their salary? Like, did I really play a part in that? And it was hard for me to believe, but at the end of the day, the results speak for themselves. Guys, your accomplishments is the thing that's going to tell you, it's going to let you know that you're not joking, that you are who you say you are. And if you don't take time to acknowledge them, it will get lost in the fluff. And the fluff is all the negative things that your mind is saying. So what I want you to do is shed light on this by even writing them down and keeping in a notebook of all your accomplishments. I actually had one client do this about 2 weeks ago where his one task for the week was to write down all the successes that he's had. And when I say that, I meant his top 10. And what I want you to do is I want you to do the exact same thing. Just write down your top 10 successes and look back on it and affirm each and every one of them. And that'll help you to see that, again, you are who you say you are. Now, here's the last tip. Here's a bonus that I wasn't going to give, but I decided, you know what, why not, right? And this is the bonus tip that I think is probably one of the most important ones. And what it is simply your results are more important than your feelings. I'll give you a quick story and then I'll wrap this up. So I had a client who was looking to get a promotion, and they had an interview, and they were talking to me about it because they're feeling a little nervous, and I gave them some techniques. And when they went to the interview, guess what? They still felt so anxious that the person interviewing them said, "Hey, trust me, you got this, relax, and let's continue with the interview." So they breathed and they kept going with the interview, and then it was over, and they said, "Hey, come back, or rather we'll call you in about 2 weeks and let you know the results." And after 2 weeks, they gave her a call and said, "Hey, you've been promoted. You've got the job." And with that promotion came an increase in raise, and also they're able to work, honestly, from home. So now, their entire life has changed. And here's the thing that was funny about that. That person that was going through the interview, they were nervous and they got the job. And I asked them the question at the end of it was, what was more important to you? Being confident in the interview or getting the promotion? And they said, getting the promotion. And that's what I want you guys to remember. It's not important to feel confident. What's more important than feeling confident is being able to accomplish the task at hand. This is one of the best ways, and this is why I want to make sure I added it at the end, but this is one of the best ways to help you to overcome imposter syndrome. It's by focusing on the actual tasks that you need to be focusing on and less on the feelings. Because when you accomplish the goal, the feelings that you're looking for of confidence, happiness, peace, all those things will come once you do the worthy things that you say that you are going to do. So to quickly summarize this podcast real quick. So the first way that will help you to overcome imposter syndrome is to give your mind, and rather give this imposter syndrome, an identity. The second way is to stop fighting it. Guys, when I was on that zip line, the last thing that I could do was make this anxiety go away. And that's the last thing that you should be focusing on. So stop fighting it, allow it to be there, and focus on the real work. The third way is to affirm your accomplishments by celebrating them. And then the bonus that I gave you guys was that results are more important than your feelings. When you get the results, the feelings that you're looking for, those will come. So this is Coach Wells. Thank you for checking out this podcast, and I'll see you later.